Hi, I wanted to make a quick overview video for the features of Morpheus. It's an add-on with a bunch of different operators and functions that covers a variety of actions. Yeah, I want to step through the features and show you what it can do. The first button is a quick rig. So I've downloaded this Spidey OBJ. Haven't done anything to it. It's just a mesh. Haven't aligned it or anything. And I'm just going to press a button and it's going to do the Rigify setup process for me. And it's not going to be perfect. It's set up for an A-frame character. Like you can see the hand bones are a little long here. The feet are a little bit off, which can be adjusted. But it'll get you close. And it will be improved in the future. I have ideas on how to make it dynamic for T-pose and how to make it match up a little bit better. We just haven't done it yet, but it'll get you pretty close. Like if you just need a guy sitting in a car or static pose, it's gonna do okay for you. So that's a button, just a really quick way of getting into a pose from any mesh, and it works on anything. You can even, let me just delete this whole rig real quick. As silly as it is, you can just like assign it to anything and it will create a rig for you. See how it does with Suzanne. Yep. So obviously doesn't make a lot of sense, but maybe you're just looking for some wonky deformation tools. This would technically work. So that's the first button. The second button is a quick array and deform menu. So if you click that, you will get this little pop-up here, which you can dynamically set in real time and play with to get different shapes. It's a very common combination modifier setup, and so this is just a way of having it immediately accessible here without needing to jump around in your modifiers panel and set it up. Pretty useful little operator there. Quick mirror or smart mirror is going to, no matter where you're at in a scene, it's going to set up the mirror to create a true mirror with your objects. And you can switch here the different operators. You can also shift select. So now we have the full setup, and it's going to make it sticky. So you're going to have a perfect mirror mesh ready to go. So if you're building a car or anything that requires mirror setups, it's just a better way of setting up the mirror. It takes some of the work out of it for you. Next button is just an automatic subdivide and smooth. Just does that process for you. Pretty self-explanatory. Weight to normal, same thing. Just applies the weight to normal. It's just something that it's a combination that you'll see a lot. So just put it in the same panel. Height of hidden. So height of hidden. If you have, if you do something with a boolean here, there's a section down here for booleans as well. And you do this and you apply this effect using apply all modifiers. Now it's applied, but you still have your original boolean shape. So height of hidden will just go through your scene, and anything that's hidden in the render view, it's going to hide in your viewport. So just a quick operator for that. Let's step back here and we'll go ahead and turn off our mirror just to get back to our cube. And it's probably a good chance to jump over to quick center. So this button will quick center it back to your world origin and apply the geometry, or apply the origin back to your geometry, just a way to quickly center objects. This is just an ambigon fix. So yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. It triangulates the faces and then converts the tris to quads. So let's say we subdivided these two. Oh, whoops. I just want to subdivide. We'll just subdivide that. Okay, so now we've got this ambigon fix that's going to triangulate and then convert tris to quads. Just a quick way, just another process, another two-step process boiled down to one button. Clean mesh. So if we had some duplicate verts hanging out that we didn't want, we have done some sort of cleanup work, or we brought in some sort of file that was messy, we can clean the mesh. And now those are gone. It's going to remove loose parts. It's going to recalculate the outside normals. I think it applies scale. And does it apply scale? Let me see. Yeah, it looks like it may have applied scale or applied all transforms. So it just cleans up your mesh. So a common combination for me is to clean mesh, and then apply the InBeGone fix, and that gets me in a really good place to apply other modifiers. Generate vertex group. This is a cool one. So let's take Suzanne and let's generate vertex groups, and it's going to use a bunch of math to create 40 vertex groups. So let's find like top 50%. So if I select top 50% and I say select, there's the top 50% of verts in our mesh. If you want the right 10%, do that, and there you go, there's the right 10%. So there's a bunch of options here. Let's say you want the left 50%. It also calculates normal direction, so if you want all of the ones that have a normal direction facing down, or all of the ones that have a normal direction facing up. Pretty cool tool, because it just does all this for you. You can also set an interesting origin distance and then calculate the origin distance. So this is 50% in a certain direction away from the origin. And if you want to expand this list, it's pretty straightforward. They're just values in the code that you can copy and paste and add to. The math is already set up, so that's a really useful function there. Quick lattice, it does all the magic for you to get a lattice set up. If you're just looking for a way to deform something and animate it without having to actually affect the original geometry, that's a quick lattice setup. 360 will just spin the object. So, well, we selected the lattice, so it's spinning the lattice. Let's select this guy. And it's going to spin it over the timeline and assign linear keyframes. So you're going to get a perfect 360 from that. This is a tracker, so if you click this button, whatever object you're selected will get tracked by the camera, and then it will jump you over to that camera, and it will set that as your viewport mode. So that's another useful button there. And then the last quick button is an apply all modifiers. So we only have one modifier here. Let's just generate an array. So apply all modifiers will just apply all modifiers of your selected object in order to get you in a good place. And then you can, if you are feeling like there's still a little cleanup needed, you could then clean up the mesh and be in a really good place. Okay, so those are the quick buttons. Let's take a look at some of our other mathematical operations here and creative options. Okay, so the first creative operator here is a greebler. So I'm going to add a plane. And I'm just going to give it some more height so it looks kind of like a panel. And now I'm going to press Greeble, and it's going to use insets, extrusions, and bevels to greeble our plane or any object. Loop cuts will increase the amount. You have different greeble operators here, so these basically change which faces are getting selected for extrusion, which faces are getting selected for beveling, each of the actions essentially. And then you have a bunch of properties to play with to change what it looks like. It's a greebler. It's not as good as like a full-blown panel operator plugin. It's just going to affect individual faces. So there's no like smart panel building or anything. It's just like quickly make a bunch of extrusions and go from there. The second one is a ringer. So now that I have this panel, I can create a ring out of this panel by clicking the ring function. And that's going to set up a radial array and bring up the properties here that I can play with in real time to essentially set up a ring. And if you really want to change your bend angle, you can get sort of a bendy thing as well. 2 times pi is always a perfect circle in radians. There you go. All right, so moving on, our third creative operator here is a fracture. So I'm going to go ahead and apply all operators just to get this in a single mesh state. And now fracture is going to do essentially what it sounds like. It's going to fracture our mesh, and it's going to give us 2 controls. It's going to give us faces to separate. So 100 would basically be don't separate anything, give me the full mesh. 0 would be, don't give me anything. And it's a fracture. It's a very quick fracture. And then you can add a number of cuts. And the cuts is basically going to slice this up a bunch of times. So the more cuts that you add, the more it's going to get sliced up for fracture. And if you accidentally slide too far, like I just did, you can definitely lock up your computer. So let's see if this survives, and if not, I will reload. Okay, well, it survived, and it's pretty detailed. I mean, that is a very, very, very detailed fracture. So quick fracture, I'm definitely going to step back because this probably can't work with this much, although it is a really nice fracture. I think we're going to have to step back. So let's step back. The next button is a cage shred. So this is a cool feature. It's a little complicated to try and explain, but it's let's actually hide our circular plane here, and let's go to Suzanne. She'll help us explain. And let's hit cage shred. So cage shred is going to evaluate the outside of the mesh, scale it up, and using a direction, it's going to shred the cage of that mesh. And you can see it here. We're saying, okay, we want to shred upward. We're scaling by 1.1. You can change your scale to be whatever you want. 1.1 is just a starting point. And then how many faces are we going to shred? So 80%, you're basically saying, give me the 80% of the faces in a direction, and separate them, fracture them essentially, but keep it as a cage. This is a cool feature, so you can do something like this, and then you can do it again, and you can do it again, and then you can say fracture this. Oh, but we're going to have our huge value, so this is going to take a moment. Let's reset this back to a acceptable value, and you can come in here now and you can fracture each of these and probably get a pretty interesting result here. But this last one, I'm going to say give me like 80%, so it looks like the other pieces came from this mesh. Okay, so the next creative operator is a fractal button. So this is going to duplicate and distribute your object using a fractal algorithm. And you're going to get some controls to control the distance, the rotation, the number of iterations, and the scale. And it's just a good way to quickly create some interesting distributions using math. Some nice applications there. And just a second version of it that does it along a different axis using a different algorithm. Again, iteration control, scale control, and offset distance. So you can get some interesting structures pretty quickly. And we'll delete those. The next few are very similar in terms of the way they function. They're just using different algorithms. So this is a viral distribution, which is pretty interesting. I should probably change the name of that operator, but gives you a classic biological structure. So you can do this, and you can do it multiple times to create interesting biological shapes. You can join those, and you can do it again. And now we're quickly getting these pretty interesting scene arrangements. And now we're getting some interesting scene arrangements that would be useful in things like medical videos. Delete those guys. So that's the first viral. The second viral is pretty similar. Just a different algorithm, different duplication, different distribution. You have scale again. You have detail levels, but actually is sort of morphing the it's almost like a rotation, really. It's kind of hard to explain. And then branch length is sort of as you move outward, how far away are they going away from each other, and then angle is the actual rotation of your branches. So again, another creative distribution algorithm with some interesting applications. The biology stuff here, the two bio, are very similar to the viral algorithms. They're just different algorithms. This one's pretty interesting. It creates basically a pine cone shape, which you can then spin around. How about that? That's a really interesting effect. Scale factor here. You can see it really. So that's the distribution effect that you're working with Bio 1. And we'll step back just to our sphere. So our next creative algorithm here is the Bio 2. It's similar in how it works. It's just a different algorithm. So you can see its distribution, shape, and effect here. It's this sort of coral effect as opposed to a pinecone effect, and it's pretty cool, pretty interesting. Yeah, you can just quickly make distribution patterns that you may have to otherwise step through. And then from here you could boolean and then union, and this works on any object. So if you let's say you wanted to add Suzanne just to show off your add-on, there you go, same effect. It's just a distribution algorithm. The next creative operator is this mandala operator, and so you get two of these, and this is a little bit different. It creates a mandala controller that allows you to basically have a few points that you can animate. You can animate the controller, its position, its rotation, its scale, and that's going to change your mandala effect. And you can always go back and you can rerun this multiple times to create a mandala from your mandala. So now you have two controllers here. Really, really cool effect. You also still have your original geometry that you can play with. So, anytime if you wanted to go in there and change it, you still have it. And the first one creates a mandala around the object. So wherever the object is, that's where your mandala origin is going to be. The second one creates the mandala around the world origin, or the 3D cursor, excuse me. So if I press that, now we've got a controller made based on wherever your 3D cursor is set. And so now you're getting some really, really complex arrangements here. And so you have total control over animating all of this just by changing the rotation and scale and position of your controllers. So you can see how quickly we made this, and it's definitely very interesting. So those are the mandala machines. They work on any object. And if you're interested in doing any sort of like kaleidoscopic effect or abstract mandala effect, they're really, really powerful. There's a lot going on here after a very short amount of time, even though this isn't designed to do anything in particular. It's pretty cool, and it's three-dimensional. So if you rotate along a certain axis, then you're going to get your mandala is going to be transformed along those axes. A lot can be done with just those two buttons. The next one is a spheralized distribution effect. So kind of going like re-exploring further distribution effects here. This one's cool. It creates like a sphere out of any object. And then you can control the radius. You can control sort of the scale of each thing. So 1 would be they're all the same size. 0.5 would be, each iteration is 0.5 of the previous one. And after making your sphere, maybe you want to try the next operator, which is a hexalizer. So this will create a hexagon out of it instead of a sphere. And you can increase your hex sort of scaling here, and change the spread, and change the scale factor, but you can also change the detail levels or how many iterations. Same thing, just this time it's a hexagon instead of a sphere. Okay, moving on to our last 4 creative distribution effects here. This is a strange attractor. It is sort of a random noise distribution effect. Let's see here. I have to zoom out a bit. And there's some values here, but it's essentially the random version. It's not completely random. There is values here to play with, but yeah, it uses a strange attractor algorithm to distribute them and create essentially randomness within your distribution. The next one is a trefoil knot. The next one is a trefoil knot. The next one is a trefoil knot. So take any object and create a knot curve for you, and then distribute that object along that curve and allow you to change scale and distribution along the curve. But just a quick way to create a knot. Kind of similar. The next one is is a helix effect. So this will create a helix curve and then distribute the object along the curve. So if you need to make screws, or you need to make, you know, DNA helixes or whatever, there you go. It's a very quick way of making a helix out of anything. And there's your curve. If you decide you wanted to distribute something else, the curve is left behind there. But you can see how you can click on any object and it will generate a helix for you. And our last creative distribution algorithm here is a shapealizer. And that's going to give you control over the number of sides. So built off of the hex and the sphere, I just kind of wanted a way to be able to control, you know, basically how many sides are there. What if I wanted to make a pentagon instead of a hexalizer? So just give that ability directly to the user instead of baking it in. So here we're saying, okay, I want 3 sides, distribute 3 sides, give me 5 levels, you know, control the scale by 0.6 on each level, change the vertical spacing by this much, and then adjust the rotation of each one as well by this much. And there you go. You can see how that works. Maybe you want an octo shaper. And here's your rotation by level, so you can see how it you can create these sort of, yeah, just very similar to the other distribution, just gives you the control. So those are the creative operators. There's a couple of quick particle effects here. No matter where you are on your timeline, you can always hit explode, and that's going to create a quick explosion. So if I press play from here, boom, you're going to see it explode. And that's going to work from wherever you're at on your timeline. So if you're on frame 1 and you press explode, you'll see, or I guess you're going to see frame 2. So start the explosion on the next frame, and the explosion is going to last 10 frames. Let's say you want it to last 50 frames. You can do that. So now it's going to be a much slower explosion. But yeah, it's going to look at where you are. And when you press explode, it's going to say start the explosion on this frame +1. That way, when I press play, goodbye, Suzanne. So quick exploder, and it's just particle effects. So you can come over here and tweak the details yourself. So the next particle effect is a trails effect. And if your object is moving, it's just going to create trails of itself behind. With some effects here on, you know, how long is the trail going, and these are frame values. So how many frames does the trail last for? What is the size of the trail effect? And then how many are we doing? So we'll just do 50, 50, and 50. And then we need this object to be moving. So we'll say move, and then we'll press play. And we need it to move a little faster than that, a little further than that. And so there you go. It's just a quick setup for trails. Trails is one of the most common, probably the most common particle effect for creating things. So let's see here. It's not quite a trail effect right now because it looks like the particles are lasting too long, and there's not enough of them. So we're going to make it shorter, apply that movement again, and he's got to go faster. So getting a little bit closer there, but it's got to be tweaked. But just a quick setup for trails that you can then tweak to your liking. The next section here is just quick access to the booleans. So I'll show you the really quick workflow here. Let's say you've applied your boolean, then you can all from the same panel just say, okay, apply modifiers, hide, in begone fix, and now clean up mesh. And when you clean up mesh, you have a merge distance option here. So, you know, when you make a boolean, sometimes you get little verts right next to each other. So maybe you set this to 0.002. And when you tab in here, not only has the boolean been applied, but your mesh has been cleared of any ingons, and the normals recalculated and scale applied, but you still have some verts in here that are a little questionable, maybe too close, like especially right down here. So you can just come in here and say merge by distance, find the right value. It looks like it's probably 0.015. Yeah, that's cleaner. And then our last panel here is just a quick view saver. The top button, if you expand this out a little bit, you'll actually see numbers. But the top one will save your current viewport views. So if I press this and then I move around and I press the button again below, I'll jump back directly to that view. It's essentially stored views. It's like a mini quick version of stored views. So maybe you like this view, and maybe you wanted top-down view for your third one, and from the side for your fourth one, and maybe from the other side for your fifth one. Now, no matter where you're at, and no matter where you're working, you can just say, oh yeah, jump back to the first view, jump back to the second, jump to the third. Just putting it all in one panel for you. So that is all of the current features for Morpheus. So thanks for checking it out. And yeah, hopefully it fits your workflow. Cheers.